Welcome to Truth and Liberty. Thank you for joining our daily live call-in broadcast, where trusted leaders bring biblical insights to the issues, and you can call in and get your questions answered in real time. According to the Bible, it's the truth you know that sets you free. So call in today to get answers, information, and resources to help you stand for truth and effect godly change in our nation and the world. And now here's your host, Richard Harris.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Truth and Liberty Show, this Friday edition, June 14th. And I'm Richard Harris, your host. Really excited to be coming to you today. We have changed things up a little bit here on our program. Last Wednesday with Andrew Womack, we basically had our first show under this new format of an hour long, and our broadcast time is 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock p.m. Mountain Time now, so that's 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And we've reduced our show length to an hour here based on popular demand. I think an hour and a half is a long time for any program, and we feel like we could deliver more focused and effective content by just cutting that down to an hour. And we're gonna experiment with some other changes here on the format of the show and stuff, which I think you're gonna like. And today's program, I just want to focus in on an issue that I think is probably the most important issue next to faith in God. It is the most important issue facing our country today. And in fact, you could say, I think anybody would agree with this, that if we don't get this area of our nation fixed, that we probably won't have a nation much longer, or the country that we know and love, the United States of America, will lose its defining character potentially forever, not to mention everything else that will go south on us. And I'm talking about education today. I'm talking about the subject of education. Educating our children is what determines really the future of our country. It's not how much money we make. It's not how big our economy is. It's not how good our movie industry is or anything else. It's what are we doing with the next generation? What kind of values, what kind of principles are we instilling in them? What are we teaching them about who we are as a people? And what are we teaching them about God and the issues that really matter in life? Recently, I saw a headline in our local paper here in Little Woodland Park, Colorado, that set me back. That caught my attention, I should say. The headline said that the local school board had voted to approve a policy that would require teachers to use a student's preferred name. Right? Not their given name, not their legal name that their parents gave them, but their preferred name. And of course, I knew immediately this is an LGBT trans thing. What's going on? Read the article. I try to stay as informed as I can, but this one slipped by me. Our state legislature here in Colorado passed a law in this last session requiring all teachers, all staff really, including volunteers and janitors and everybody else in our public schools in the state of Colorado to, if a boy whose name is Tom wants to go by Tammy, you have to call him Tammy. If his name is Steve and he suddenly wants to be called Sue, you have to call him Sue. And the law that our legislature passed makes no provision for parental authority, parental notification, or parental consent. It's whatever this student wants, the student gets. It also makes no accommodation for teachers or staff's views on the subject, for their conscience objections, their religious views, and so on. And this raises a question. The question that we keep getting faced with in our culture today on this and many other subjects is really the fundamental nature of humanity. Who are we as people? And one of the most fundamental things, you've got two things going on here at the same time. One is this fundamental thing called gender and sexual identity. The Bible says that in the beginning, God made them male and female. Male and female created He them. Yet the left in this country is telling us everywhere, all the time, everywhere we turn around, we're hearing the message, gender is subjective. Gender is a construct. You can choose whatever gender you want. In fact, right now you might want to be a girl, and in 10 minutes you might want to be a boy, and that's okay. Or you can be something in between that no one can really define. It's okay because it's not real. Well, these are lies. These are lies that we're being told, that are being told now to our children and to the youth of this country. And you know, it also, the second thing is, in this, is it's the parent-child relationship. The relationship between parents and their children is a fundamental aspect of human reality. It was woven into us from the beginning of time. The Lord is the one who gave us the ability to procreate, and He's the one that gave parents responsibility to raise their children, right? And because the left and the progressives in this country have rejected God, have pushed God out of the equation in every sector and in every part. You might remember, it was probably 4 years ago, I think, the official platform of the Democratic Party adopted a provision that embraced atheism, right? And counts atheism as a bona fide religious viewpoint, and embraced it totally. And the left has been pursuing this radical secularization and pushing God out of every sector of our society for a long time now, where they even fight against having prayer at opening sessions of Congress. They push against including under God in our Pledge of Allegiance. When Nancy Pelosi was Speaker of the House, and here's the story: the Republicans controlled the House of Representatives. They passed a law for the renovation of the interior of the Capitol, and part of the renovation, they were going to have the national motto of "In God We Trust" emblazoned at over the Speaker's rostrum in the House chamber. Well, they lose the next election for whatever reasons, and the Dems come in. Nancy Pelosi's elected Speaker, she kills it. Says, no, we're not going to have "In God We Trust" over the Speaker's rostrum. This hostility towards God and faith in public life. So first, we've got a bill here. A bill that basically, let's see, what's the implied message of this bill? The implied message is, we're supposed to affirm a child's delusion about a fundamental aspect of their identity, their gender, their sexual identity. We're supposed to affirm not their gender. You understand, folks, that's not what the left is doing here. That's what they're calling it, but that's not what it is. They're affirming a delusion, okay? And the second thing is they want to undermine the parental authority by putting the school and the state in the place of the parent. And this is just the beginning of what's going on in our public schools today in America, and it's just right here under my nose. And I thought, I want to talk about this on Truth and Liberty because I have people right here that I can call in who are going to be experts and experienced in this. And so I want to go ahead and transition now and bring on our first or our guest for today's program. And I want to introduce him to you. His name is Derrick Wilburn. And Derrick is the founder and the executive director of an amazing ministry called the Rocky Mountain Black Conservatives. He's one of the leading black conservative voices in our country today. And I'm not asking him to come on the show really to talk about race issues. I'm really asking Derrick to come on because last year he ran for school board in Colorado Springs, and he was elected. He currently serves as a member of the school board in District 20 in Colorado Springs, one of the most important districts in the state of Colorado. Derrick is also an author. He's a pundit and a commentator and just a great leader. He's written several books, and you might know Derrick from a viral YouTube video that came out 2 or 3 years ago where he went to a school board meeting. I think it was D49. Correct. Derrick, and critical race theory was on the agenda, and you took the microphone. It was your turn to speak, and you stood up and you said, "I am here to tell you today," and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, "I am not oppressed. My children are not oppressed, and I do not believe that we live in a systemically racist country," something to that effect. And it just set the internet on fire. Mm-hmm. And now here you are entering into the education establishment as a member of the school board in D20.
All true.
All true.
Thank you, Richard. And first of all, let me put the disclaimer out that I'm not speaking as a representative of D20. I'm speaking as a representative of myself. My comments are my own. But concerning the video you're referring to, and I told you before we came on air, I found out just recently that was one of the 5 most clicked on and watched videos in the world.
Wow.
For almost 20 months. I had no idea. I was just in the right place at the right time. But I have privilege. So when it comes to the CRT discussion and what have you, I have privilege. I was born into a household with my biological father and my biological mother being married together, and they stayed married until I reached the age of adulthood. Well, they stayed married for the next 50 some odd years, but that is privilege. That doesn't matter what your skin color is, what your socioeconomic status is. It doesn't matter where in the country or in the world you live. If you come from that household environment, you have privilege. A child who is born into that household, mother and father are married before they're born and remain married until they reach the age of adulthood. That child has less than a 3% chance of ending up in federal prison or ending up in abject poverty.
And it doesn't matter whether you're white or black.
No,
having 2 married parents of the opposite sex being raised in that home reduces your risks for poverty, for suicide, for drug addiction, for violent crime, for prison.
It just works.
Yeah.
It just works. And I had a father who, my father refused to let me let racism or racism be an excuse. He didn't want to hear it. He didn't want to hear it. He didn't deny that racism exists. Of course racism exists. Nobody denies it exists. But his disposition was, Derrick, look, if you got to get up earlier than your white counterparts, if you got to stay later, if you got to work harder, then that's what you have to do. And you cannot let somebody else's opinion of you because of your skin color be an excuse for your lack of performance. I had that in my household, and that shaped the rest of my life, and now I've put that into my children.
Well, Derrick, when you stood up to the school board down there, a couple of years ago, and you talked about critical race theory that is in our schools, can you give some perspective on that? What is CRT, and why is it so damaging?
It's a big discussion, but essentially, critical race theory is the core of it is the Marxism was based on the bourgeois and the proletariat. We now, in this theoretical construct, are the oppressed and the oppressors, where the majority in this country, of course, that's the Caucasian population, are the oppressing force over the ethnic minorities. And the next step is that race is not a biological or a ethnic concept. It is a social construct. So combine those two, and you have a basis for people who are from disadvantaged or underprivileged communities, and our ethnic minorities are considered to be being oppressed by a system that was put in place by those who are in the majority. And I'm not willing to say that that's all 100% false, because for years this country did, and in some areas maybe still does, favor laws for white people that were put in place by white people. But we no longer live in a country where there are signs over doors that say colored and white when you go to the bathroom. I refinanced our home a couple of years ago, and I checked that box African American, and not one of the mortgage companies that I was shopping saw that and said, nope, we don't lend to your kind. That stuff, it doesn't happen anymore, and it doesn't do me any good personally to wallow in the belief that it does, because that's not what my dad taught me. My dad taught me, shake the sand from your sandals, walk on to the next town, be your own man, and don't be a victim.
Right.
And I'm not.
And I'm not saying there's no racism in America. That's crazy to say that. Of course there is. There's hatred of all kinds in a country this size. But here you are. You run for office in a predominantly white district. I mean, the African American population in D20 is probably
minuscule,
5% or less, right?
Minuscule.
And you win by a large margin, and your YouTube video went viral, not because you're black, you're white, because you're saying things that people believe.
Well, you watch that video, and there's all the people behind me who are supportive and standing up and clapping. They're all white. I won our election pretty handily. My running mate and I won pretty handily in a predominantly white district. I'm the former vice chairman of the Colorado State Republican Party. I ran and won in 2015 for the first time. And so this is all Republican. This is a closed election. No one can vote in it except for Republicans. And I ran against 3 other people. There were 4 of us on the ballot, me and 3 white people. And I traveled the state doing what you do to campaign. The way the rules are in the Republican caucus is you have to win via simple majority. So you have to get 50% of the vote plus 1. Yeah. If nobody gets that, then the bottom man drops off or woman drops off, and then you ballot again. And if no one gets it, you do it again until eventually somebody gets 50% plus 1. Everyone said, Richard, everyone said this is going to take at least 2 ballots. At least. I mean, the math just isn't there. With 4 people on the ballot, we're going to have to do at least 2, maybe 3. I won it on the first ballot. With awesome. Nothing but Republicans, which is 99, Colorado Republicans, Colorado's a pretty white state, with nothing but Colorado white registered Republicans voting, they voted for the black guy. So I don't want to hear all that because I'm living proof.
Well, you've been on school board, not for a long time, a few months here, Derrick, but real quickly, do we have CRT in our public schools, especially here in Colorado, and is it a concern?
I can't answer the question, do we have it in our schools? Because, of course, it's a big country. I have my suspicions about the public school system in Philadelphia and Detroit and what have you and what's being taught there, but I don't have that concrete knowledge. And if I did, I don't have it committed to memory. Okay. So all I can comment on, of course, is my schools. All right. In District 20, I don't see it as being a pervasive problem in our district. It's not systemically injected into our district. But we're a different community. We're the home. The dirt that my district sits on also contains the United States Air Force Academy, Focus on the Family, Every Home for Christ, Compassion International, David C. Cook. We're a hotbed of Christian ministry where we live. So we're a little bit insulated. But I would strongly suspect if you went to the neighborhood I was born in, which is Morgan Park, Illinois, inner city Chicago, probably pretty strong there.
Well, another concern, though, and this is what I led off the program with today, is the LGBT agenda and ideology that's invaded our public school system. And I know for a fact that this is pervasive in our schools. We've had on our program here multiple guests to talk about that, including Aaron Lee, whose daughter was actually groomed and recruited in a so-called art class, and I think that was in the Poudre School District in northern Colorado. And the entire, there's a whole movement that, in my understanding, was launched in Boulder, Colorado, called something about the queer agenda or whatever, but it's invaded our schools, and I'm wondering, is this something that you are concerned about, and are other board members concerned about it, and what's going on out there on this?
My principal concern first is as a parent, not as a board member. Where I come down on this is really quite simple. There are some things that are the schools, i.e. the government's role and responsibility in education. There are some things that are not. That's my responsibility. And it's my job as a parent to instruct my children on issues of sexuality like these. I don't want the school wrestling that power away from the parent. So that's number one. Number two is, I mean, we have to ask, there's been an explosion of children, of young people identifying as some form of queer, LGBTQ, choose your alphabet soup. But there's the numbers are off the charts the last 3, 4, 5, 6 years. We have to ask, why is that? Is it because society is now more accepting and coming out is more comfortable for them? There's probably a component there. But we have to ask, why are these numbers where they are? And the third point, and this is, I think, the big one concerning what you talked about in your opening monologue, and that is government inserting itself in between children and parents. That's just wrong. Who cares more about a child than their parent or parents? Nobody. Nobody. Certainly not bureaucrats in the state capitol or in Washington, D.C. who don't even know your child. And when you see the government beginning to insert itself into the family structure and making decisions for parents, or removing parents from the decision-making loop, that's where I have a bigger problem.
Yep. Well, and what do you think about the idea of this, of teaching our kids this whole gender theory where you can be whatever gender you feel like, you can define it however you want, that it has no connection to biology. Are we really educating our children here, or is this indoctrination?
Let the parents make the call is what I think about it. Leave the government out of it. So there's no place, in my opinion, for you to make decisions for me about my child. There are children who are gender confused. I mean, that's a real thing. Nobody denies that. But for the school to encourage it behind the parent's back is a problem.
Well, here in Colorado, a few years ago, they passed House Bill 1032. It's called the Comprehensive Human Sexuality Education Law, or something like that. Anyway, comprehensive sex ed is what it is, and it comes out of the United Nations and a conglomerate that's led by Planned Parenthood. And we fought against this law. It passed over our objections here in Colorado, but it requires that students be taught various forms of sexuality, various forms of sexual behavior, and that they be completely devoid of value judgments about what is healthy, what is appropriate. The only thing that matters in this law, I've read it many times, is so-called consent, right? It even mandates on abortion, for example, that children be taught that abortion is an acceptable pregnancy outcome. Of course, it's not an outcome of pregnancy, it's a termination of pregnancy. But Derrick, this is an agenda, isn't it, that's being pushed in our schools?
It is, but I'm going to come back to where we started, because the crucible is parental involvement and parental control. So if a school is going to introduce curriculum that you and I might find controversial, or that anybody might find controversial, if it's done above the table in a transparent fashion, and parents know what's happening and are given the option to opt in or opt out, their child opt in, yes, I want my child in that class, no, I don't, okay, because there's only so much we can do to slow that train down. I want to see schools and school systems that are working in cooperation with parents, not opposing parents. And I wrote a column, I've done lots of writing for different publications and whatnot, Richard. I wrote a column a couple of years ago called, we used to call them tomboys. So when you and I were boys, well, when you were, I was a boy 20 years after you. When you and I were kids, you had girls that we called tomboys, right? We're 10, 11, 12 years old, and these are the girls who would rather play baseball and hunt for frogs than dress up in dresses and play with Barbie dolls. Tomboys. No big deal. I mean, some people watching right now are saying themselves, that was me. But then later in teenage life, as we get into puberty and the body starts to take on some more feminine characteristics, and girls start to fill out and what have you, now they start to get interested in boys, and boys start getting interested in them, and that just kind of runs its course. We now have people, many of them in governing positions, who see that 12-year-old girl and say, we got to get her a double mastectomy and put her on hormone blockers so she can be who she truly wants to be. And that's one level. Then the next level is take that disposition and give the power over that decision to the child.
Right.
So we're not going to go to mom and dad with this gender confusion of your daughter. We're going to let the daughter make the decision to do these things to herself.
Right.
And a lot of people are finding out now, it's all coming out later because it takes years, that we have micro penises and people who are unable to achieve orgasm for the rest of their lives as a result of some of these things that they decided to do when they were much, much too young to be able to make these decisions, and their parents weren't even informed. That, to me, is criminal. Yeah.
And Derrick, the statistics coming out of our public education system generally across America are not good. The average proficiency rates are in the mid-20s, right? So about 24% of our kids read at grade level, do math at grade level. We have suicide and depression rates that are skyrocketing. What needs to happen in our schools to get back on track? America used to have the finest public education in the world. Now that's been 50 years ago, but I believe we could get back there. What are you trying to accomplish?
Some return to fundamentals of education. Let's just educate children and prepare them for a future as a productive member of society if they go into the workforce, or prepare them for secondary education if they choose to go that path, whatever it is. Those things and the fundamentals of reading, writing, arithmetic, history, and civics, and physical education, which, by the way, I just learned is the most failed class right now. Is physical education.
Okay.
A lot of that because of truancy. Kids just don't show up. But I look forward to PE. Right. That was the best part of the day. That's all changed. Focusing children on skill sets that are going to develop them and prepare them for the workforce of tomorrow. That's where we need to be, because the workforce is constantly changing because technology moves so fast, right? I mean, there were kids when we were in school who took auto shop and then went on to become auto mechanics. Fine, great career. But we have cars now that don't even have engines, right? And if our schools aren't keeping up with that fact, we're not preparing them for life outside of high school. So focusing on education is where we need to be, and as a school board member, that's where I want to be. And all the social construct stuff, let mom and dad handle that.
Yeah. Well, another thing that you and I have talked about off the air a little bit is the importance of choice in education and empowering parents with school choice options. Can you comment on that?
There is no such thing as a situation in which competition does not benefit the consumer. Competition always benefits the consumer. And the one thing that we're lacking in many places in the country in education is competition, which forces everybody to sharpen up their swords. So charter schools, private schools for those who can afford it. Here's the thing, we have school choice in America right now for the wealthy. All right, Barack and Michelle Obama's children
did not go to public school.
They went to a very good school. And so if you're wealthy and you can afford it, that's fine. But for those poor kids who are trapped in inner city, whatever it may be, and forced into that dangerous, underperforming school at the end of the block with metal detectors, there are people in this country, predominantly on the left, who say, that's the school you're going to go to and you're going to like it. Getting choice in there and giving mom and dad the option to send their children to an environment that is better for that child is a win for everybody. It forces the school they've exited to sharpen up the sword. It gives their child a learning environment in which they are going to flourish. So educational choice, I would encourage anyone and everybody, when you see options for educational choice at your school board level or on the ballot, read it very carefully and give a lot of consideration to voting to introduce more options in education.
Well, Derrick, real quick, with a minute left, why does the education establishment in this country, the teachers' unions and all these organizations, why do they fight school choice so vehemently?
There's money behind it. So the teachers' unions in the last, I believe, 4 to 5 elections have donated 100%. The NEA has donated 100% of the funds that it donates to candidates on the left, who in turn support the unions, who in turn support keeping kids in those schools. So they have a vested interest in seeing to it that things remain status quo. And look, if the public school is working, if your kid's going to a public school and it's working and they're getting a good education, and there's a lot of schools like this in District 20, great, fine, let's keep that going. But doubling down on failure, which is happening in a lot of parts of the country, simply doesn't make sense.
Absolutely. Well, Derrick, it's been great having you on the show. Really appreciate it, and we wish you all the best as a member of the board down there in D20. You're doing a great job.
All my pleasure, Richard.
All right, great. Well, stay tuned, folks. We're going to take a little break here, and then we'll be right back with Bishop E.W. Jackson to provide some additional insights into this whole subject of education in America.
With practical government, you have experts in the fields that are sharing their perspective, wisdom, and experience. It's not available anywhere else in the world.
We teach a biblical worldview. We're going to teach a Christian heritage of our American government. They're going to learn about the Founding Fathers. We're teaching the Constitution, how government operates, practical skills, and field study.
There's no better place on earth to get equipped than Karis. You know, God's not done with us, He's not done with America, and He's not done with you.
So many people come into practical government school and they're scared because it's the mountain of government. But you know what? They come out so strong, and that is so amazing.
No matter where you're coming from, the world needs you.
Whatever God's calling you to do, you're able to do it.
To learn more, visit practicalgovernmentschool.com.
At Truth and Liberty Coalition, we have big plans to make a big impact. If you want to be a part of turning our nation back to God, I want to invite you to become a supporter of Truth and Liberty. You can go on our website at truthandliberty.net to the donate page and make a gift there. And you can also sign up to make a recurring automatic gift of $5 or more per month, and then you'll become a Truth and Liberty member. And our gifts to Truth and Liberty are not tax deductible, but I promise you, God sees your generosity. So go to Truth and Liberty and become a member today. All right, we're back here on the Truth and Liberty Show, and our guest in the last segment was Derrick Wilburn, the founder of Rocky Mountain Black Conservatives and a member of the school board in a local school district here in the Colorado Springs area, and a good friend of ours. And he had some really interesting comments, and I'd like to bring on to the program now someone who you all probably know and love, our good friend Bishop E.W. Jackson. Bishop, thanks for coming on the show.
Richard, always a pleasure to be with you. I, by the way, watched the interview with Derrick. Great stuff. Agreed with every word.
Did you? Well, for our viewers, you know, part of what we're doing here in changing up the format of our show is Bishop and Janet Porter and Alex McFarland were regular hosts on the show, and you're still going to see them just like now as we bring them on for commentary or even as guests and other things like that. So we are still very much in the fight together in this, and I'm just thrilled to have you on the show, Bishop. Yeah, the subject of education, I mean, could there be anything other than, you know, just revival itself and faith in God? Is there anything more important that we address in our country today?
Well, look, I think there's a two-pronged approach to this, family and education, and those two go together. We've got to have strong families that are, as Derrick was pointing out, in charge of the educational decisions for their children. Those two go hand in hand, in my view. Without strong families, you have an educational system, sadly, that is corrupt today and will simply take over and mislead the child, indoctrinate the child, usher the child into a completely depraved way of looking at life, while the parents just kind of sit back as passive participants. So you need strong families, and then you need educational freedom, educational choice, so that those families can say, look, let me decide. Do I want to homeschool my child? Do I want my child to go to a Christian school? Is there some kind of special school that I want my child to attend that I think is going to offer them not only the academic skills and information, but also the kind of character development and training that I'm looking for? So yeah, education and rebuilding the family are two critical linchpins to securing a future for our country.
Well, and you know, Bishop, your story, your personal story is, and I don't want to put any words in your mouth, but it's a powerful testimony about how you were, as a young person, you were headed down the wrong track. And it was when your father got re-involved in your life and took responsibility and kind of got you back in line and in shape, and you ended up, you know, attending Harvard Law School and graduating with honors from Harvard and becoming a minister with a great successful church and ministry. You've you were the Republican nominee in the state of Virginia for lieutenant governor, and just the last cycle you actually ran for president of the United States. And I just look at you as an amazing example of what we're talking about here, that it's parents who have the primary responsibility for the education of their children. And if we lose sight of that fact, where are we going to be?
You know, this is why this is not an academic discussion for me, Richard, because I've lived it. I went from being a fifth grade truant, a petty criminal, a gang member, a street kid in fifth grade, to my father taking custody of me in the summer of after my fifth grade year. I was 10 years old, to being an A student in sixth grade, not having